Started. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to have each of you here. This is recorded, so this will be available for the organization beyond today's webinar. My name is Lauren Baptiste, and I'm really excited here to be presenting this session on this postmenopausal shift. Right? A few months ago in, I believe it was May, we talked about what is menopause, or the transition from the mid stage of our life to the wisdom years. But now we're having this conversation like, I'm here. Now what do I do? So before we go any further, let me introduce myself so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. As mentioned, I'm Lauren Baptiste. I'm the Chief Empowerment Officer at Acheloa Wellness. My firm works with individuals and with organizations to break through the effects of stress so that you can thrive. And what this means is my work focuses on using a science called Ayurveda, which, if you haven't heard of it before, it's like the traditional Chinese medicine from an Indian lineage. And this science helps us understand where we're at this time in our life. What we need as children is different from what we need as adults, what we need in our wisdom years and beyond. So it's been a great way for me to take this background in Ayurveda, yoga, all these Eastern healing modalities, and mix it along my corporate background of over 10 years in accounting and corporate environments to create a space where we can have these simple techniques that we can implement into our busy lives. Now, today is all about you and working through menopause. And if this is, maybe you're here because you're working towards that, maybe you're already there, maybe just interested in the topic. I really appreciate that this organization is discussing a topic like this because it's often overlooked. We maybe talk about women's health really vaguely, but today we're going deep. We're talking about menopause as it is and how it affects us. So this is what we're here doing today. So I hope you're in the right place. So let's spend the next hour. We're going to start with a welcoming and grounding exercise. We're going to go through the top 5 menopausal concerns and how you can work through them. Talking about ways to balance menopause, embracing menopause right now in your life if you're there. And then questions if you have any closing thoughts. And throughout, we'll have some opportunities for engagement. But like I always like to share in these types of workshops is that this is for you. I'm here to present information, but if you have questions, please feel free to answer. We are a small group today. So what we can do is just come off mute and share. We can ask questions as they feel appropriate. And if you feel like you want to ask it anonymously, feel free to do so by direct messaging either myself or Kate, who's on my team. And she's amazing. She was here last month as well. And she'll be here to support this session today and even our next session in a week. Now, what I hope for you today is that you can feel really empowered when it comes to this topic of menopause. I want you to understand where it's coming from the perspective of Ayurveda. I want you to understand in your own body where you stand, what's going on, where you might be seeing some imbalances in your body and or mind. Learning some positive postmenopausal tools and techniques to thrive in the third act of your life, to connect with your community right here. And next step, should you be seeking more support? How does that sound? I hope that sounds good. Feel free to give me a little emoji or a thumbs up. I always love to just make sure I'm hitting the mark for everyone here. Okay. So let's take a moment and arrive. We could be anywhere right now. So the fact that we're making this conscious decision to be here for this hour is a really, it's a choice. And so I want to make sure that I'm using that time as productively for you as possible. So the first thing we could do to make sure that we're obtaining all that we're about to receive is to start by breathing. So let's start with the ABCs of breath work. A for alignment, B for breath, C for connection. So let's start by getting our alignment right. So if we are sitting right now, I encourage you to sit towards the edge of your chair and then make sure that your legs are at a 90-degree angle. Your thighs should be parallel to the floor. Your shins should be parallel to the wall, that nice 90-degree shape, so that your spine can sit nice and tall. Allow your eyes to soften, either closed, or if that feels like too much, you can just gaze at the ground. And then we'll start to shift into our breath, inhaling through the nose, filling up the low belly, the mid belly, and the upper chest. And slowly exhaling out through the mouth. Inhaling nice and slowly, filling the belly, the chest, all the way up to the crown with breath. Exhaling to release out of the mouth. One more deep inhale, filling up nice and large, expanding from all sides. And exhaling out the mouth. Take a moment in silence to connect. Connect with yourself and to this moment. When you're ready, you can begin to reopen your eyes. And we'll go forward from here. Now, one thing that's really powerful is the power of our breath, and we're going to explore that a little bit more in a few slides, but just even notice yourself. What happened in those few deep breaths? Do you notice any change in feeling a little bit more grounded and ready to receive information? Were we able to quiet the mind a little bit, or even just cool down if we were running back and forth from place to place? Sometimes a few deep breaths is all we need to really recenter ourselves. So when we look at our life, and for those of you who may have come to the first menopause workshop, this initial one, that transition, I mentioned this, but I want to mention this again in case you're new to this topic and conversation. But the idea here is that there are seasons of our life. Just like the seasons of the year. I'm here in upstate New York, Kate's from Texas, and I know everyone else here is in Florida. So the seasons aren't always the same. I know it's like hot and hotter in Florida, but I think a lot of us at least know the cycles of the winter, spring, summer, and fall. And the idea that even the moon has cycles from new moon to full moon, back to new moon. And then even just as briefly mentioned, we have these cycles from birth, childhood, middle ages, wisdom years, and beyond. And this is important to bring up because as we're thinking about these seasons of our life, we can start to notice that there will be seasons of things that we require as we age and as we change. And a lot of times, maybe if you've heard of your menstrual cycle being called a moon cycle, that was something that we were thinking about in our younger years. But at this point, usually, right, at menopause, we're without a cycle. And that has a different effect too of where we sync, where do we find rhythm, how do we find harmony in this time in my life. What a lot of times when I'm speaking with women in this age is that there's almost a rhythm that fell off. You know, I don't feel that syncingness with myself, or I just feel like the sameness all the time. And so this idea here is an opportunity to find a rhythm that works for you in this time of your life. Now, moving through these slides quick, we're bouncing around. Okay, so we have our top 5 menopausal concerns, and I want to spend time today on each of these because this is where I'm getting a lot of feedback. And I want to share this with you because as we're thinking through your next steps, this is going to be really important to figure out what's affecting me most. Sometimes we're aware of it, sometimes we're not, and this might bring some information to light, but then also an opportunity to say, now, what do I do about it if I'm experiencing that? So let's look at these top 5 menopausal concerns. What we see here is cooling hot flashes, improving our sleep, combating dryness, caring for our heart, and maintaining strong bone health. Those 5 things are what I'm seeing most often when I'm speaking with women in this stage of their life. And hopefully, you know, some of these, at least maybe whether they're affecting you or not, you're noticing that these are pretty common amongst your peers as well. Now I'm going to just throw up the first polling question. The answers are completely anonymous, and I don't need, you know, and I know this is like your own health journey, your own personal journey, but I'm curious if any of these you feel like really important to like improve in your life right now? Are you noticing any of these are coming through pretty strongly that you would look for some support on? So just throwing out a polling question, if you can answer that and let me know what's feeling really important right now. All right, great. So we will see that today, and this can change every time I do this topic, it changes from group to group, but usually the number one is pretty strong, which we'll see right here, is that cooling hot flashes is number one. And then this one can vary. Number two can vary, which would be for today, caring for your heart and noticing maybe sleep isn't affecting as much, or combating dryness not as much, or bone health. But we'll go into those because as you're shifting in your years, these different ideas or things may come up and affect you, or as someone's listening to this on the replay, they might be most affected by sleep. So however, we'll just go through them all so that you can feel really equipped with the arsenal that you need to thrive. So let's dive right in here. Calming hot flashes. Okay. So up to 80% of those going through menopause suffer from hot flashes. This is important not only as a cause of unease or dis-ease in the body, but it's a sign of significant fire that's wreaking havoc through the bloodstream. Now, if you've ever had a hot flash, it can feel like that, right? Heat is just like running through your body and it's coming from your blood. Your blood is where the heat is coming from. So when we think of or are experiencing regular hot flashes, it could be a sign that there's a little bit of imbalance. Now, one thing that we'll notice, right, when we look on TV, right, this picture of this woman who's like in front of a fan, you know, I've even seen this a lot, even in women in my family, friends and beyond, and just this like feeling of like very hot. And we're used to that, almost saying that this is a normal, like this is just what we all experience, this is what it all is, and menopause has to be. And the idea here is that when we're experiencing these symptoms, it's an idea that the body is telling us we're running too hot, because as we're shifting from the middle age of our life, which is a fiery time, and as we cool off into our wisdom years, some of that fire hasn't fully released out of the body yet. So that's where we're hitting the friction. Like if you notice a thunderstorm, there's that like friction between hot and cold, which creates the storm. And that's a little bit what's going on in our bodies as we're experiencing hot flashes. So one thing that we can think about doing here, there's a couple things actually. So we have this whole list. And the first one, I love to like create ideas that are simple, easy to apply, easy to integrate. And so one thing that can help us reduce some of that heat in the body, one is drinking a pomegranate juice. Pomegranate is an astringent fruit. And what that means is it helps take away heat. It's more of a cooling fruit, so it helps us reduce heat. Where there are some other fruits that might create more heat in the body, pomegranate is a really nice one because it's taking away with its astringency. Fresh lime or peppermint tea. So a lot of times when we're hot, you know, we like lemonade, or we like certain types of drinks that like iced coffee or even soda. But what those things are doing is actually heating up the body. Even though the temperature is cold, it has a post-digestive effect of being hot. Now, lime, on the other hand, is much cooler, and fresh lime can have more of a cooling effect in the body, as can peppermint in a tea. So I thought this can be really nice, whether you're drinking iced limeade, iced tea, or if you're drinking them warm just because you like warm drinks, this can be a really nice balance for you in the body, shifting from that, again, hot to cool. Another thing here is being mindful of your body weight. Excess weight here can create this excessive insulation or insulative layer, which would make the body hotter. So you want to be careful too. If you're underweight, losing weight can create more stress on the body. So we want to maintain that healthy place. And if we notice maybe over the past few years, because our metabolism has slowed down, maybe we notice that we've gained some weight. So just finding that healthy balance, right? We don't need to all be, feeling like supermodels here, but we want to just make sure that we're in a place where we're not creating that extra insulative layer. Another thing I like here when we're thinking about hot flashes is right, where this idea of cooling down. And another way we can do that is meditating. Our ability to maintain inner peace really helps us maintain a balance in external circumstances, which really serves all of us. So if you've ever noticed when you get angry, you literally get hot in the body. And so if we can stay more calm or equipoised in different scenarios as they come and go, it keeps us more calm. Stress can absolutely have an effect on our hot flashes. It affects our hormones. It affects our menopause. So being really mindful of trying to find on the inside that coolness that can help you as well. And then I like for this last one right here is practicing a cooling breath work. And we're going to practice a couple today. And we're going to have two that we get to go through. And this idea is that there are breathing techniques that are warming. So there are ones that help us generate heat or energy. And then there are ones that release energy or help us cool down. And it's really powerful because we think the breath is just something that we do, but obviously it keeps us alive, which is wonderful, but it allows us to really find harmony and balance in what we need. And for someone who's experiencing hot flashes or excess heat, what they need are practices to find more chill, more cool in the body. And notice the words, right? We've heard like cool as a cucumber or, chill out. And it's this idea of like, that is the medicine to what we need that we can apply naturally to help us in our body. So we're going to shift into a breathwork practice, and I'm going to walk you through two different techniques that I know to be very simple, good for any age, good for any time of life. And they can really be used as much as you want. So there's really no overdosing here when it comes to these types of breath works. So let's start with our first one. The first one is called alternate nostril breathing. And it really is just that. We're breathing in one nostril and out the other. And just as a little background, we're not going to go too deep into the yoga practices, but we have a lunar side and a solar side. And most of us, most of our life, most of the day are breathing in our right nostril, which happens to be our solar side. What that means is it brings a lot more heat. It also gives us drive. If you ever notice, what there really should be is a balance in lunar and solar, a balance in masculine and feminine, right? We want women that are both masculine and feminine. We want men that are masculine and feminine in terms of traits, qualities, all of those things to help us be balanced. So when we're thinking about this breath work, it's a really nice opportunity to reharmonize the one side that isn't getting as much attention. And you'll notice too, so the way it works is that when you breathe into the right nostril, it goes to the left brain. And when you breathe into the left nostril, it goes to the right hemisphere of the brain. I did my hair today. I guess it works out well that we could talk about different hemispheres. But when we're breathing into the right nostril, it's activating the left side of the brain, which is our more linear, focused, I'm trying to think like your number oriented, your kind of like that side of your brain, whereas the right side is more of your creative, is more of your imagination, more of your reflective place. And the idea here is not that one is better than the other, right? We're not trying to say, let me stop being analytical and shift into my creative, but like, how can I bridge those together, right? So the idea is like, we're going to create some harmony. How do we do this? Through this breathwork practice. So what we're going to do, we could take our peace fingers of our right hand, and in this picture, you'll see the girl actually doesn't do that, but I find it a little bit easier if I take my peace fingers of my right hand, that's the pointer and the middle, and I bring them to the space between my eyebrows. I'm going to take my thumb and cover my right nostril as I inhale through the left. The most important thing to remember in this breathwork practice is to start breathing in through the left and you end on the left. So I'm going to inhale through the nose. Close the nostril with my ring finger, holding it both closed, releasing the thumb, exhaling through the right nostril. Inhaling through the right. Closing with the thumb, releasing the ring finger, exhaling out. That's one round. Inhaling. Closing with the ring finger, releasing the thumb, exhaling through the right nostril. Inhaling through the right nostril. Closing with the thumb, exhaling out through the left. Let's continue for another round on your own. Inhaling through the right. Closing. Sorry, exhaling through the right. I said that wrong. Inhaling through the left. Exhaling through the right. Inhaling through the right. Exhaling through the left. And we'll just do one more round on our own. I'm just showing you different ways you could do it. And when you finish on your left side, take your time. You can bring your hands down to your knees or wherever is comfortable. And over time, you may not be able to do this right now, but you actually can control which nostril you breathe out of at any given time. If you're like, oh, my arms are tired, you know, what you do is you start to imagine what I just said, inhaling through the left nostril, exhaling through the right. And you'll notice maybe in the beginning, it just feels like it's all the same coming in and out. But over time, as you practice these muscles, it can discern the difference between left nostril and right nostril and left nostril, and then you could practice it there. So this is one of the breath works that an Ayurvedic practitioner that I know very well. She's highly focused in women's health. Like she says, if there's one medicine for women pretty much at any time in their life, this is it. There's no perfect way of doing this. It's just doing it. And she said 15 minutes a day can be the difference of experiencing hot flashes and not, experiencing some side effects of menopause and not. And this is a really peaceful, grounding breath. So maybe some of us aren't really good at sitting, meditating in one spot and not moving. Most of us can't get our mind to focus like that. But what you can do is set a timer on your phone for 15 minutes, or even break it up 5 minutes, 3 times a day, or whatever feels good for you. And then just do it, right? You can sit there and just feel the air come in, feel the air move out, and just repeat that for a few minutes. And you will notice a difference. It seems so subtle and it seems like, how is this possible? How can this work? But it is very powerful. I've seen it. I've experienced it through clients. I've seen it in even those that are kind of going through hot flashes, premenopausal, just really stressed out women in general who are just noticing a lot of excess heat in their body. It's a really powerful technique, especially living in Florida. There's a lot of heat already happening. So this can be a nice way just to continue to breathe and find that balance. Okay, let's move into our second breath. Now this breath is called Shitali breath, and this is another cooling breath. So luckily I'm not forcing anyone to put on their cameras. Don't worry, nobody needs to do that. I'm happy to do it. This is another really cooling breath work. This one is actually really great for after we eat. It's good for other ways to cool down, but if you can do this for a few minutes after you eat each meal, it helps balance the heat in the belly, and it helps with that digestive process. So just as a side note. But again, it has that same cooling effect in the body that we can start to invite in our life. And so the way to do it is essentially you're creating the little hot dog bun with your tongue, and I'll do it in a second, but it's hard to talk and do it. But what you'll do is create that little hot dog shape with your tongue, and you'll breathe in and out through the tongue. Now you're going to notice that you're not able to take as big of a breath, and that's okay. You may notice it's as if you're breathing through a straw. It's a little bit more narrow. So if you have any trouble or difficulty breathing, you can release the technique at any time. The point is that this should feel comfortable. That's why usually I will default to the alternate nostril breathing, because most of us have control over that. If you feel like this doesn't work for you, just let it go, and that's totally fine. The reason why I share different techniques is that so you can practice different things. So we'll just do this together for about a minute, and I'll keep an eye on the time and we'll go from there. So when you're ready, you can create that hot dog shape. I'll let you continue for another 30 seconds or so on your own. This is great if you just ate lunch and you're just kind of sitting here working through post-lunch. We'll finish one more breath so you can inhale, and then as you exhale, continue with that little hot dog shape, and then you can release the tongue. And take a sip of water if you need. And we'll keep going. But yeah, I would love to know your experience. Feel free to add into the chat. What are your thoughts of these breaths? Have you ever done them? Do you notice that you're feeling a little more cool, a little more grounded, a little more focused? Are you feeling the opposite? I would love to know your experience with this breathwork practice. And both of these are available for you at any time that you want. It's really nice. You could even be sitting on a bus home, or, maybe right now we're doing masks, so maybe that's not the best thing. But I used to do, just when I used to commute in and out of work, I would just sit and do some of these types of practices because it can be really helpful. All right, so let's move into our second concern. So a lot of times when we're working through menopause, we're not able to sleep as well. I don't know if you've noticed, but maybe you're getting up a little bit more in the middle of the night. Maybe you're noticing that the quality of sleep is not as heavy as it used to be. It may be lighter in nature. Maybe it's taking a long time to fall asleep. Maybe you wake up at 4 a.m. and you can't go back to bed. Is this you? Or is this someone even right? A friend, a colleague? Have you had these conversations with your peers, noticing that we're all kind of working through this time where we're not sleeping as well? This is really common for this stage of life. In this stage of life, as we shift from more of a fiery phase and our childhood being an earthy phase, we're moving into more of an air phase. So what that means is we can be disrupted more frequently. The rough, mobile nature, the subtleties of this time of life can really affect how well we are sleeping. So I wanted to help because we want to bring a more restful sleep. And to do so, we're going to balance that lightness that we're experiencing in these later years in our life with a little bit more heaviness, especially before nighttime. So a lot of times they say the sleep disturbances are caused by hot flashes, but these recommendations here that are below can really help you start to feel better. So one that I really love, and this is something I even subscribe to in the winter or the colder months for me, because it's that colder time of year, but this might even feel good for you, is drinking warm milk before bed. Now, they say this is what we give to children, right? But it actually works for us too. So if you're someone who is inclined or interested in something like this, right, you can do either a golden milk, which is really popular now with some turmeric and black pepper. You can just drink it on its own, or even put in a pinch of cardamom or another spice that's just very gentle but tasty. And it doesn't have to be piping, steaming hot, right? That's not the idea. It's just to be not cold. Cold milk can be too heavy for a lot of our digestive systems. And another thing to think about is the quality of milk that we're drinking. I read a whole blog post about this because it is really important that we're drinking the best quality of milk. A lot of times we're thinking fat-free or skim or 1%, but the idea is we want the whole milk. What is it, like nothing but the milk, right? We just want like the whole thing. And so as you're thinking about if this is something you want to invite into your life, I'm happy for you to email me with questions, but ideally we want lightly pasteurized, non-homogenized, which means the cream on top, like the good old days where we can drink milk and then it still has all of its properties fully intact. Another thing we can think about doing is giving ourselves a foot massage before bed. When we rub our feet, it helps our body relax. It also can become a habit that it's starting to train yourself that when you rub your feet, it can get you in more of an induced state to sleep better. What this does, right? It's also breaking up any pressures or tensions or stressors that are happening throughout the day, and it's helping to find calm, peace, and ease. So here, of course, improving sleep is to make sure we're getting sufficient sleep. So we want to make sure at least that we're carving out the appropriate time every day to get the sleep that we need. Sometimes we're trying to go to bed at 12 or 1 in the morning, and then we have to wake up at 6 and we're feeling pretty lethargic. So being really mindful that you're giving yourself enough time to wind down after your work day, to rest appropriately and fully so that you can wake up feeling fully rested. Another way we can improve our sleep would be to rest and wake up at the same time. So according to the Ayurvedic clocks, what we really like is to try to be in bed before 10 p.m. and awake by 6 a.m. So notice what works for you. Everyone has their own bodies, their own rhythms, but notice if it's working for you, right? If you notice that you're not sleeping, it might be worth shifting that just a little bit, right? Notice maybe even if you can get to bed by 11 versus midnight or 1 a.m. If you can wake up at 6:30 versus 8 a.m., right? Notice those little shifts in your sleep schedule and see how you feel, right? It's a continuous experiment. Our bodies change, what we need changes, and that's going to continue to happen. But as you are in this stage of your life, routine really behooves you. It's going to be really good for your body to rest at the same time, eat at the same time, do as many things as possible around the same time, give or take 80%, right? Like we want to make sure that there's some flexibility for life and living, but it really does do well if you have routine. Valerie, I see your question. I'll answer it in a minute. I'll just go through these points. A few other things here. So no lights or electronics about an hour before you sleep. And the idea here is that right, a lot of us have heard about the blue light. It keeps us awake. So just one way that we can find more ease, can you disconnect from your screens? If you're here and you're working all day, maybe it's a really nice opportunity to journal, read a physical book, or do that breathing meditation, right? You could sit on your couch and make it easy, or whatever else you want to do that feels good. But it is nice to start to reduce the lights as the days get darker so that your body can adjust to the circadian rhythm of the sun. All right, and then the last thing I'll put here for improving sleep is to consider the 5 senses of good sleep. So we all have, right, our hearing, our sight, our scent, our touch, and our taste. So I would say maybe the taste doesn't fully apply to sleep, but I will say the other 4 definitely apply. So what we hear, are there loud sounds? Is there snoring from our partner? Is there, like, what's going on? How is your sleep getting disrupted by sound, and how can you improve it? Sometimes that means wearing earplugs. Other times that can mean a sound machine. Maybe that just means silence instead of the TV on in the background. Be mindful of the senses because they're perceiving everything as you're trying to rest. As it comes to touch, making sure that you have sheets that maybe wick away any moisture, making sure that the temperature in the room is appropriate so that it's conducive to sleeping. I think they say 72-ish, somewhere from like 68 to 72 is like that ideal sleep temperature. So notice what works for you. Thinking about sight, is there a lot of light pollution that's getting into your room that's affecting how you're sleeping? In terms of smell, right? Are we smelling, is there fresh air coming through? Thinking about maybe essential oils and diffusing those at night, things that help you feel good about sleeping, right? If you're disrupted by sounds, smells, sights, you're not going to sleep as well. So just something to think about there. Okay, so I actually now see this question twice, so I'm going to answer it before we shift away from improving sleep. So how about almond or oat milk before bed? I will say that it's definitely better than nothing, right? Like almond milk and oat milk are heavy. They're not as heavy as cow's milk, but for vegans out there or some vegetarians who don't want dairy, and I know that milk can be very controversial at this point just because we've heard so much of and where the milk is coming from and all of those things. So I absolutely get that. Yes, it's absolutely better than nothing. And that can help. So think about, you can still put some nice spices in there that will help feel more grounded as well. That's why I love turmeric and black pepper, because they're very grounding. But what they do is they nicely balance out the heaviness from the oat or the almond milk. So that can be a nice mixture there if that's something you're interested in. But yeah, I mean, I am all about the other milks. The one that I usually don't recommend is soy. And the reason for that is that usually the soy that's coming from those types of milks are like not good quality of soy, but also what they have, the effect on the body is essentially like not helping from a nutrient perspective, because it's being perceived in the body often as a toxin. When it comes into the body, it's throwing off your estrogen levels, and that can be really disruptive in things like hot flashes, sleep, heart, right? So I'm all about the almond, oat, cow, goat, whatever milks, but I will say that I for women especially, I do not recommend soy milk. So hopefully that's helpful. There's so many options out there. I feel like cashew milk, hemp milk, like, I don't know, fill in the blank. There's so many at this point, but yeah, I'm okay with all of those except for soy. So hopefully if you are like a soy drinker, maybe that's something you can shift away from, especially if you're noticing a lot of imbalances through these 5 concerns that we're talking about. All right, let's keep on rolling. Thank you for those questions. Okay, combating dryness. Now, this is something as we age that we're just dealing with. As we shift from the phases in our life, that is one that comes with this time of life, with this dosha in Ayurveda we call vata. And what it's known for is dry. What that can mean: dry skin, brittle bones, dry nails, fragile hair, teeth that break more easily, right? These are the things when we think of dryness, whether it's direct or indirect, but even constipation. Dry organs can lead to constipation. And so if you're experiencing any of these things, they are or can be related to menopause. And it can become really empowering of like, oh, you know, if I've been experiencing constipation, like what can I do about that? So here are a few things. I talked about this a little bit last time. We were talking about increasing moisture as shifting. So now this is like, it's not just moisture now, we're like fighting the dryness that's happening in our bodies. And we can do this by inviting more oil and more water. Now, I know oil can be a little taboo. I think some of us were like, we love oil. Some of us, we hate oil, or we just cook with oil, but like, hear me out. And then you can make your own decision of what works for you. And that's again, why I put so many options on the table. Massaging with oil is a really powerful way that we can help oilinate the skin, calm the nervous system, and help with, you know, stiffness in the body. In the actual scriptures from at least 3,500 years ago, they talk about one who oilinates the skin, one who massages the body with oil is likely to be stronger, better immunity, and even be considered more charming. So who knows? I'm into being more charming, so I'm into it. And I massage my body, especially up here in the north in the winter. Again, that's the vata time of year, and we're talking about the vata stage of life. So we're just really trying to be mindful of this time of a lot of like light, space, air qualities. So massaging with oil is really good for us. And I always want you to think, right? Because a lot of times I'll get the question of, what about a moisturizer? And I want you to be willing to take a spoon, put your moisturizer, cream, lotion, and eat it. Literally eat it. And if you're not willing to put that in your mouth and eat it, you should second guess why you're putting it on your skin. The idea here is that your skin is your largest organ. It's your most porous organ. So everything that you're putting on your skin goes into all the other areas of your body. So if you're not comfortable literally eating your moisturizer, you should think about what you're putting on your skin. And so I will even talk to individuals who like love putting extra virgin olive oil on their body, right? Like I work with some who love that. I often do a sesame oil, and not toasted sesame, just being mindful because that has a whole different kind of chemistry component. So don't do toasted sesame. You can do a raw sesame. You could do coconut, avocado, almond oil. I will say in this stage of life, Coconut is probably good here and there, but coconut oil is cooling. If you notice, it's generally solid unless it's really hot. And so unless it's really hot in the summer and your skin, you're just like dealing with a lot of heat, maybe someone who's dealing with heat flashes may benefit from coconut oil. But as we're moving into this stage of life, I would say probably an almond or a sesame oil would be really beneficial for your skin. And you can also eat with it too, right? You're willing to put it on a spoon and eat it. And so we can cook with those oils and use those oils. So we're not going into nutrition as much, but it's something just to think about. Okay, another thing we want to do is hydrate. I won't go into this in too much detail. It helps balance us in so many ways. It helps us moisturize our cells, our organs, and that helps us, again, if we're dealing with constipation, if we're dealing with electrolyte imbalances, dizziness, headaches, etc. For women, for menopausal women, I love steam room, better than a sauna. We want to increase moisture, not increase dryness. So a steam room is one way to do it. And a lot of times, I'll just kind of say this really quickly, I get a lot of comments from women talking about even dryness that can be as we're getting older, vaginal dryness. So just thinking of ways that we can lubricate that. Again, food that we would put onto a spoon into our mouth. So if we're not comfortable with doing that with whatever we're using, consider a coconut oil or a ghee to help moisturize, lubricate, whatever you need. So just adding that because I get that comment a lot and hopefully that's beneficial. All right. Caring for your heart. Now, this is one that we're always thinking about. We want a healthy heart, right? If we don't have one, then it doesn't do us too good to not have a healthy heart. So what we want to do is move the body daily, and we want to do things that are conscious in finding relaxation. Those two things are huge in terms of keeping the heart nice and strong, right? You won't see here that I'm asking you to do an hour of high intensity cardio workouts every day. That's not needed. But what is important is that you continue to move your body. What that does is it breaks up stagnation in the body that's building up from days, work, stress, whatever. It helps move and detoxify. But then on the other hand, right, that's the physical medicine for caring for the heart. And now when we talk about the mental medicine for caring for the heart, we want to really think about ways that we can find calm in our life. So maybe it's even shifting away from those in our life that don't serve us. Maybe it's doing something like a crossword puzzle every Saturday morning because it brings us joy, or engaging in volunteer work, right? There are things that we can do that help us feel good. As we're shifting into this time in our life, it's important to think, how am I using my time? And how do I make the most of this time? Because this, when we think of like working and beyond to maybe retirement, we want to make sure we're enjoying the third act and make it the best year, the best phase of our life. The last thing I'll put here quickly, just being mindful of what you're consuming. I mentioned it a little bit briefly, but foods that are too heavy, foods that are too fried or canned, or sometimes if they're just like frozen meals, they can over a long time have an effect on the body. Of course, once in a while, we can work through stuff like that. But if we're eating fried food every night, it can have an effect on us, on our heart, right? So it's just something to think about. Alcohol and coffee as well can have an effect. So I'll just leave it at that. But if you have any specific questions, just write them in the chat and I'm happy to address. Okay, maintaining strong bones. Now, I love this one because our bones are also equivalent or tied to this Vata time of life. It's equivalent to the winter time of year, the postmenopausal years in our life. And our bones can become very dry, brittle, frail, right? They could easily break. And we know this when we think of growing older and the effects of our, life on our bones. They say women that don't have great menopauses, right, can have a stronger, have more of an issue with calcium and making sure that their bones, they may have effects of bones that aren't as strong. So what we want to do first and foremost, again, I'm really all about, like, if you're not having a daily bowel movement, we want to get you there because it's really important. It's important in your entire life, but it's really important in this stage of your life that you're having daily Ideally morning bowel movements. How do we do that? Adequate fiber. We can do that through dates, plums. We could get that from a lot of ways, but just throwing that out there, like make sure you're getting adequate fiber, make sure you're hydrating enough. If you're noticing that you're not having those bowel movements, before you go to a pill or something that will do that for you, we want to make sure your digestive tract is strong enough to maintain what you're eating and how you're living. And so if you can't do that, if you're not like able to kind of do that regularly, think about what you're eating. Think about how food's sitting in your body. A lot of times I'll speak to women in this age of life and they're dealing with a lot of bloatedness, gassiness, pain in the large intestine because things aren't moving. There's a lot more space and air getting trapped in the body. So we want to make sure, again, hydration, oils, we want things just like continuously moving through. Another thing to think about, getting calcium. Again, that could be from there's a host of different foods that are good for calcium. You could even just Google best foods for high calcium. That's where milk comes in again, and it can be beneficial, again, if we're drinking the right kinds of milk. A daily dose of vitamin D. And so while we can take a supplement, really, living in the sunshine state, I feel like there's no excuse not to get a little bit of sunshine every day. Walking out on a lunch break, between meetings, just taking a few minutes to get a little bit of vitamin D on your skin, 10 to 15 minutes. We don't need to be cooking out there for hours, right? That's a little bit of an extreme, but just to get a little bit on the skin. And as it hits the skin, it's a stronger medicine than it is taking it orally. So that really is the best thing you could do if you can kind of roll up your sleeves for a few and just let it hit your arms and legs and maybe your chest and face a little bit. All right, and then how do we maintain strong bones? We continue to move the body. We can do a little bit of yoga, just things to help us stay grounded, stay flexible, stay mobile. When we're not moving, we become stagnant. And if you've ever seen a stagnant pond, I don't want that. I don't want that in my health. I don't want that for you in your own health. Okay, we've talked about a lot. And so I want to see what menopausal concern is feeling possible for you to improve right now. So let me throw out my second polling question. It's going to have the same answers. Oh, I realized I actually put out the wrong polling question first, but I'll put this one out. Actually, let me do this. Hold on. We'll just re-poll this one. I wonder why there was a pause earlier. Okay, so which menopause concern is feeling possible to immediately improve? Which one, given what's going on in your life, feels like you have tools to work through it? So I would love to know if you can answer the polling question. And just because time moves really fast, we're going to keep moving through the content. And I'm actually going to just, I'm going to fast forward through this next section, but I want to make sure that you have it available for you. So when we talk about food in the third act of our life, it's thinking about foods that are warm, wet, cooked, and oily. And we want the best qualities of all that stuff because what we're combating is dry, cold, kind of like raw or rough, and then also, just more dry. So we're thinking about foods that counter what we're experiencing in our life to find harmony and balance. So you can see here, thinking about stews or soups, gentle spices that help us feel warm, can really help us stay balanced. Avoiding foods that are too raw, too cold, too dry, right? Popcorn might not feel good on the stomach. If you notice you eat chips and popcorn and you're feeling a lot of pain, it's probably too dry for what you can handle. So just being mindful of kind of countering it with maybe throwing some clarified butter, ghee on it with a little bit of black pepper can make that popcorn a lot more digestible. So really working with these principles to help feel balanced. I'm going to share the results really quick. And I love that combating dryness is the concern that's feeling possible to immediately improve. And all the others are kind of one vote for each of them. So that's great to see. Okay. when we think about exercise, we went through this really briefly, but things that will be really good for you are going to be exercises that are the same: slow, warm, grounding, right? We don't need high intensity. We don't need hot yoga. We don't need, standing on our head or anything crazy. We just need things that get our body continuously moving: swimming, Pilates, light weights, gentle yoga. So being really mindful of those types of exercises as you shift to stay strong and to stay healthy. All right, now as we shift to this final phase, embracing menopause now. So I was going to do a breakout room, but we are here together. So maybe we can either, if individuals feel like they want to come off mute, or if they just want to share in the chat. But I would love to know, like, what is something that you learned today that will benefit your long-term health? Does anything resonate today? What's kind of sitting with you right now? So feel free to either come off mute or share in the chat, but I would love to know your experience of what's working for you.
Something that I really liked was the breathing exercises. People say to do that to combat stress, and if it can help with hot flashes, I'm all about it.
Yes, Sandy, like, I'm very curious if you give yourself like a 10 to 15 minute timer a day, right? Notice, will it help your stress? Yes. But will it also help your hot flashes? It usually does. So I'd be really curious to see how it goes for you. Thank you for sharing.
Hello, everyone. My biggest issue is sleep. It's just, I cannot stay asleep. It's like last night, I really didn't get to sleep till like 3 in the morning. I'm either hot one minute, I'm cold the next minute, or I'm just waking up altogether and just cannot get back to sleep. So it was comforting to know that warm milk may help, because that's like an old school remedy that we used to give our kids.
Right.
But I'm also, I preferred oat milk or almond milk. But if I've got to convert back to drinking whole milk to help get some sleep at night, I'm all for it. But it's crazy. I've even tried melatonin, and I don't know if my body has gotten used to the melatonin or not. But even taking that, sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Don't give up. There are a lot of things you could do. I say that because I know, like, in COVID, one of the biggest, menopause or not, one of the biggest concerns that I have gotten is it's really hard to sleep, right? Whether it's my mind is just spinning or I just physically can't fall asleep. And I shared a few things. There's a lot more we can do. And I always share my email. I'm happy to share more at any point. So definitely.
Are you familiar with a natural supplement called black cohosh? And if that is helpful?
It depends on the woman. It depends on the needs. So I wouldn't be able to answer that on a recorded kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
But I would say, like, it depends. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But it can have estrogenic, like, things happening too. So it's just something to be mindful of like, what your needs are at the moment. But I've definitely heard of that. And yeah.
I just saw in the chat where someone, so you should put the turmeric in, or cinnamon, or the carmine in the warm milk that helps. Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have some resources on my website too. If you just look up like milk or sleep, like, I have a lot about all of these things. So you can look them up there and see what sits for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share before we, as we shift away from this hour? It goes so fast.
I have a question for the group. Is anybody dealing with like sudden weight loss? Not the COVID-15, but just seemingly put on 15 pounds out of nowhere?
Put it on or put it off?
Put it on.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. And I've very affectionately referred to it as the COVID weight, but I bet it's attributed to this menopause.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because I generally eat really healthy, and I just really can't explain the weight gain. I'm actually having my blood work redone to see if I have issues with my thyroid.
That's funny. The doctor just gave me blood work because I was thinking
Yep.
maybe I'm pre-diabetic or something all of a sudden.
So Lauren, is that also a condition of menopause?
Yeah, gaining weight,
The weight
absolutely.
gain?
Because what's happening is your metabolism slowing. So as you're eating things that you used to eat, you're now like, okay, well, this is what I used to eat, but your body might not be able to process it as quickly. And I think, Yolanda, I think you came a little bit later, but we were talking just a little bit about, we want to make sure that if we're having like too much of an insulative layer that we're rebalancing and finding a healthy body weight that works for us. But it can be very common. And also what happens is we are now in this mindset that a salad is what I should be eating. But when I work with a lot of women in this stage of life, that might not be the best medicine for you. That might be actually harder for your body to process. So then what happens is then your body is holding on to weight because it's not getting the kind of like the food it needs to actually really break down. Like, great, an organic whole food salad may be good, but if I can't digest it, then it's really just nothing, right? It's if I can't digest it, then what is it? So it is really important to think about what's going on. And I always love, having these conversations because sometimes we either think it's just me, or is it my hormones? Is it something else? And sometimes it's just the inputs. It's like, if I'm eating food that's too raw, or if I'm dealing with too much gas or bloating, or, these little symptoms that are telling me that I might be feeling a little off. It's an opportunity to say, what can I do to shift that now that I'm in this stage of life? How do I really thrive in this time? And there are things you can do, which I love. All right, so let me launch this last polling question. So now that you know more, do you feel empowered to apply some of these tools into your long-term health? Did you learn something today? Do you feel like, hey, this turned on a light bulb for me? Maybe something I was experiencing. I didn't think it was menopause, but maybe it is. And that could be an empowering thing as we start to have more knowledge. All right. And so I know we're coming to the end. I will just kind of shift towards the end, but if there are any questions, I'll hang on a few minutes after, and feel free to throw them in the chat as well. But just so for those that might have to jump for a 2 o'clock, so we will have a second session of this. So if you came in late, or if you want to hear it again or sit with it and ask more questions, we will be having a second menopause session. That's going to be on the 22nd of July, and I believe it's at 12:30 Eastern. And then in September, our focus is finding balance when our stress is really high. So new topic in September, we're taking the month of August a little off so we can enjoy summer. But for now, I hope to stay in touch. And as I threw into the chat, this is my contact information. I would love to stay in touch. I'm happy to answer questions as they come through. A lot of times I'll even do, just like mini sessions to figure out like what's going on and how I can support you. So if it feels helpful, feel free to click the link in the chat and we can set up some time to connect. No pressure in any way. It's just kind of like a check-in to see what you need. And if you feel like you want to take that journey further. And thank you so much for joining. Again, I'll hang on if there are any questions. And just to give the answers to our final polling results, 100% of this group feels empowered to apply some of these tools. So that just fills my heart, knowing that everyone feels like they came away with an hour with some extra tools in their arsenal. So thank you everyone so much for joining.